The story of the people of the cave holds great significance in the Quran. All the narratives that Allah has revealed in the Quran occupy a central position in our faith, serving as guidance, wisdom, and lessons for us to reflect upon. I want to share some thoughts and insights about this remarkable story, and I pray that Allah grants us the ability to derive benefit from these reflections. One of the first points to understand is that the Quran is filled with stories, yet Allah tells them in a unique manner. There's a common pattern across all these narratives. Allah does not delve into excessive details. When you compare the same stories in other religious texts such as the Bible, you will find them spanning multiple pages, filled with detailed descriptions of events, people, and places. Similarly, if a historian or scholar were to write about a historical figure mentioned in the Quran, they would dedicate entire volumes to their life and times. Take, for example, the story of Ibrahim. A scholar compiling an account of his life would write extensively about his lineage, the places he traveled, and the events he experienced. However, even if you gather all the verses in the Quran about Ibrahim, they would still be far shorter than a historical book. This observation brings forth an important question. Why does Allah choose to be so concise in his storytelling? Even the longest unified story in the Quran, the story of Yusuf, is remarkably brief when compared to other historical records. Despite its length relative to other Quranic narratives, many details are still left out. For instance, while the Quran mentions that he lived in Egypt, it does not specify where he was originally from. His father, Yaqub, is mentioned, but his mother remains unnamed. His brothers are crucial to the story, yet the Quran does not specify their names, nor does it provide details about their ages or birth order. Even significant figures such as the minister who purchased Yusuf from the slave market, an important character in the story, remain unnamed. The same applies to the king of Egypt at the time. His name is never revealed. Why is that? Because whatever Allah chose to include in the Quran is what truly matters. If a particular detail was not mentioned, it means that it is not necessary for our guidance. Allah is teaching us, through his method of storytelling, what is essential and what is secondary. He is prioritizing for us what truly holds weight in his eyes. Therefore, if we find ourselves obsessing over minor details, such as the name of the minister or the chronological order of Yusuf's brothers, then we are diverting our attention from the main lessons of the story. If these details were crucial, Allah would have mentioned them. Now, coming to the story of the people of the cave, this incident is an extension of the same principle. It is a powerful narrative found in the beginning of Surah Al-Kahf. These were a group of young men who not only accepted Islam in a society that was hostile to their faith, but they openly declared their belief in Allah despite the risks involved. They could have remained silent, practicing their faith secretly while blending into society. They could have lived as hidden believers without exposing their true convictions. But Allah strengthened their hearts and granted them the courage to stand up and speak the truth. The Quran says, "When they stood up." This phrase is significant. It signifies that they did not merely believe in their hearts, nor did they whisper their faith in secrecy. Rather, they rose with conviction, standing before the authorities, and openly challenged the falsehood of their society. They refused to submit to the religious beliefs imposed by the state, declaring instead their faith in the one and only Lord of the heavens and the earth. This bold declaration was considered an act of treason, and as a result they were sentenced to death. These young men, realizing the imminent danger, turned to Allah for help. He inspired them to flee to a cave location they were already familiar with. The details of how they knew about this cave are beyond the scope of our discussion, but suffice it to say, it became their place of refuge. As they entered the cave, Allah caused them to fall into a deep sleep, shielding them from their enemies. They remained in this state for an astonishing 309 years, completely unaware of the passage of time. Eventually, they awoke, believing they had only slept for a short while, perhaps a day or part of a day. Hunger compelled them to send one of their own to buy food, but as he stepped out, he found himself in a world completely different from the one he had left behind. His clothing was outdated by centuries, and his currency was no longer in circulation. Imagine someone today trying to pay for groceries with a coin from the medieval era. People would immediately notice. As expected, he drew attention to himself. Despite his attempts to remain inconspicuous, people quickly realized that something was strange about him. Soon, the young men's miraculous story was uncovered, and their true identities were revealed. Now, as remarkable as this event is, Allah dedicates a significant portion of Surah Al-Kahf to something quite unexpected, the speculation surrounding their numbers. He tells us, some say they were 3 and the 4th was their dog. Others say they were 5 and the 6th was their dog. Yet others claim they were 7 and the 8th was their dog. At first glance, this might seem like an important discussion, but in reality it highlights a deeper issue. Throughout the Quran, whenever Allah quotes people saying they say, it is often followed by statements that are misguided, trivial, or baseless. For instance, the disbelievers would say, when will the day of judgment come? Or, he, Prophet Muhammad, is just a poet. Allah quotes these statements to expose their ignorance and lack of sincerity. Similarly, in this case, Allah is showing us that people were missing the point. Instead of reflecting on the profound lessons from the story about faith, perseverance, divine protection, and the power of Allah, some people became preoccupied with irrelevant details. To illustrate this, imagine a business teacher who shares a story about a successful entrepreneur. He describes how this person carefully selected the best location for his shop, negotiated great deals with suppliers, learned how to engage customers, and ensured excellent service leading to a thriving business. But then one of the students raises his hand and asks, "Sir, what color jacket did he wear to work?" Another asks, "Did he have a manual or digital cash register?" Wouldn't that be ridiculous? The teacher's story was meant to impart valuable business principles, yet the students focused on the most irrelevant details, completely missing the core lessons. This is exactly what was happening with the story of the people of the cave. Allah highlighted the unwavering faith and courage of these young men, yet people obsessed over whether they were 3, 5, or 7. Allah's response is clear. Say, my Lord knows best their number. None knows them except a few. 18:20. He describes their argument as throwing stones in the dark. Imagine someone standing in total darkness with a handful of rocks, randomly hurling them in every direction, hoping to hit a target they cannot even see. Such a person is not only engaging in a pointless act, but may also end up harming others in the process. This is how Allah portrays those who engage in baseless speculation. Their questions add no value, nor do they bring them closer to Allah. Instead of focusing on guidance, they become lost in meaningless debates. The real lesson here is that Allah's help can come in unimaginable ways. If He can preserve these young men for centuries, He can surely protect anyone who sincerely turns to Him. We too face challenges and trials in our lives, whether it be peer pressure, societal norms, or personal struggles, but we should never lose hope in Allah's support. He is always near, and His assistance arrives in ways beyond our comprehension. May Allah grant us the wisdom to focus on what truly matters and not be distracted by what is irrelevant. Ameen. Allah Himself could have removed all ambiguity regarding the exact number of the people of the cave. He could have simply stated, they were 7, and that would have settled the matter entirely, leaving no room for discussion or speculation. However, Allah deliberately chose not to do so. Instead, He commanded the Prophet to say, my Lord knows best their number. This alone should be enough for us. If Allah, in His infinite wisdom, has decided not to disclose their exact number, who are we to insist on knowing? Yet many people fall into the trap of fixating on details that Allah did not emphasize. They lose sight of the real lessons embedded in these stories. This is a common mistake, not just with the story of the people of the cave, but with many other stories of the prophets as well. If you find yourself focusing on trivial details and neglecting the actual lessons Allah wants you to learn, then it's time to reflect and make tawbah, repentance. For example, some people, when reading about the story of Prophet Yusuf, become preoccupied with side details. They ask, After all those years in prison, did he end up marrying that woman or not? But why does that even matter? The Quran does not delve into such details because they do not contribute to the core message of the story. So why are we so eager to find answers to such questions? What benefit do we gain from such knowledge? Similarly, people ask irrelevant questions about the people of the cave. What kind of dog was with them? What was its name? As if knowing whether its name was Bowser, Rufus, or Max would make any difference. What significance does that add to the message of the story? These are distractions that take people away from the deeper wisdom behind these narratives. But this issue extends beyond just the stories of the prophets. It happens in all aspects of Islam. There are fundamental rulings, guidelines, and principles that every Muslim must adhere to, things that directly impact their lives. You must know what is halal, permissible, and what is haram, forbidden. You must understand the rules of purification, the correct way to pray, and how to conduct yourself with dignity in interactions with the opposite gender. These are the things that truly matter because they shape your everyday life and your relationship with Allah. Yet instead of focusing on these essential aspects of faith, some people preoccupy themselves with hypothetical and impractical questions. They ask things like, what if someone is living at the North Pole, where the sun stays up for 6 months? How would they pray 5 times a day? Now, unless you are genuinely planning to move to the North Pole, why are you even concerned with such a question? Are you in the process of renting an igloo? Have you secured a job there? If not, then why does this concern you? Scholars and fuqaha, Islamic jurists, deal with such issues because they need to provide guidance for all kinds of situations. But for the average Muslim, the focus should be on questions that are relevant to their life, questions that will help them improve their faith and practice. This obsession with irrelevant matters distracts us from what truly defines our religion. The Prophet Muhammad once said that he was given jawami al-kalam, the ability to express profound meanings in very few words. This means that the essence of Islam can often be summarized in concise yet powerful statements. In one such statement, he declared, "Religion is sincere counsel." This simple phrase encapsulates the entirety of Islam. What does this mean? It means that everything we learn in our religion, every ruling, every story, every commandment, should serve a clear purpose, either to strengthen our faith or to improve our actions. If something does not enhance our iman, faith, or amal, practice, then it is outside the realm of what truly matters in Islam. This is how the Prophet guided us, by directing our curiosity towards beneficial knowledge and steering us away from futile discussions. People have all kinds of curiosities inside and outside of Islam, but not all of them are beneficial. You have every right to be curious, but your curiosity should be directed towards things that will help you grow spiritually and morally. If a question neither strengthens your faith nor helps you improve as a Muslim, then it is simply a distraction. Now let's return to the story of the people of the cave. Allah says, "My Lord knows best their number." This statement should be enough to silence any debate on the matter. If Allah has already declared that He knows best, then who dares to claim otherwise? Who can come forward and say, "Actually, I think I know how many they were"? The discussion should end right there. But notice something profound. Allah does not phrase it as, "Nobody knows their number except a few." Instead, He states, "Nobody knows the reality of them except a few." This shift in wording is significant. Allah is no longer talking about numbers. He is addressing the deeper reality of their story. Most people get caught up in superficial details and fail to grasp the essence of what Allah is teaching through this story. These young men, the people of the cave, are an inspiration, particularly for young Muslims facing trials and tribulations in their faith. They demonstrated unwavering commitment to their beliefs in the face of immense pressure. That is what matters. That is why their story is in the Quran. Most people, however, miss this point. They reduce the story to a historical anecdote rather than seeing it as timeless guidance. But Allah preserved their story in His book so that until the Day of Judgment, people could draw lessons from their example. They will remain role models for young Muslims struggling against the pressures of society because Allah himself immortalized their story. Allah then uses a fascinating word, miran, which comes from the root meaning a burning rock, one that is fiery on the inside but appears normal on the surface. This symbolizes arguments that seem harmless but are actually destructive. Allah warns us not to engage in useless debates over these matters. The point of their story is not to pull out interesting facts just to satisfy idle curiosity. Instead, the only discussions we should have about them should be based on the clear knowledge that Allah has given us in the Quran. This story was not unknown before the Quran. It is recorded that some Jewish and Christian scholars approached the Prophet and asked him about the people of the cave, as a test of his prophethood. In response, Allah revealed their story in the Quran. But here's what Allah teaches us. Although the people of the book also had knowledge of this story, their version contained unnecessary details and distortions. Their books may include additional information, but we do not need to seek it because Allah has already perfected the story in His book. This is a crucial lesson. We may share common figures with the people of the book: Prophet Musa, Prophet Ibrahim, Prophet Adam, but their narratives have been altered and corrupted. If you read their descriptions of Prophet Ibrahim, for example, you might not even recognize him as the same person mentioned in the Quran. Allah is teaching us that the Quran contains the most accurate, beneficial, and timeless knowledge. There is no need to seek additional information from outside sources when Allah has already given us the purest, most perfect version of these stories. This should shape our entire approach to learning Islam. We do not study the Quran and the Sunnah merely to satisfy curiosity, we study them to transform ourselves. Every lesson we learn should either strengthen our faith or improve our practice. May Allah make us among those who internalize the wisdom of the Quran. May He grant us the ability to focus on beneficial knowledge and avoid distractions. May He instill a deep love for His book and the Sunnah of His Messenger in our hearts and in the hearts of our families. Ameen.